There's no substitute for prevailing on the battlefield. So I could not be more stronger in favor of the operation that's ongoing in CENTCOM right now. And the success of that is very important for deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. And then as we bring those combat lessons learned into our own operations, and we're directly involved, including in the theater itself, with potential missile strikes on Diego Garcia, maritime interdiction operations we're conducting, as well as actioning of Iranian combat vessels. And so I think that what I want the PRC to see is that the United States employs capability and will in response to aggression.
Stop. Rewind that in your head. A 4-star admiral, the commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, just sat in front of the United States Senate and confirmed in plain English that American forces are actively involved in military operations against Iran. Missile strikes, maritime interdictions, the actioning, that's military language for engaging and neutralizing of Iranian combat vessels. Not allegedly. Not sources say. Not leaked to a reporter at 2am, said out loud, on camera, under oath, in open session. And the reason he gave? It wasn't just about Iran. It was about China. Because the message Admiral Paparo was sending carefully, deliberately, wasn't just to the senators in that room. It was to Beijing. It was to every military planner in the Percy who is right now watching how the United States performs against Iran and deciding what that means for Taiwan. That's what this hearing was really about. And to understand why that matters so much, why what this admiral just said should be the lead story on every front page in America right now, we need to back up. Because the full picture from this Senate testimony is even more alarming than that one clip. This hearing started with Taiwan. Senator Shaheen had just returned from a bipartisan trip to the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. She met with Taiwan's President Lai. She sat with their legislature. And the message she brought back to Washington was direct. Taiwan is still debating a $40 billion special defense budget, a budget that could decide whether they can actually defend themselves if China moves. And she put that question directly to Admiral Paparo.
First of all, nothing has changed in the American policy on Taiwan and the 3 communiques, the Taiwan Relations Act, the 6 assurances. Our foreign military sales with Taiwan are not out of the norm over the almost 50 years of Taiwan Relations Act. And so we can't want Taiwan's defense more than they want it itself. And it's not a chicken and the egg, because you're not going to get chicken or eggs if you starve the chicken. So it's very important for them to fund their own defense.
Well, thank you. I agree. And we made the case that there were 2 reasons to pass it. One was to send a message to China, but also send a message to the American Congress, which is very supportive of Taiwan and would like to see this action taken. General Brunson, you kindly mentioned our visit to Camp Humphreys. I was very impressed by that visit, and it was my first time, so it was nice to hear the perspective from all of the men and women serving there. And in South Korea, we also had a very good meeting with the Lee administration, who President Lee was very focused on reaching the transfer of OPCOM by the end of his administration. Now, you talked about the importance of capabilities versus capacity, which was a point that we made to him as well. But can you outline what the key capabilities are that the U.S. provides and that we need to continue to provide for the foreseeable future?
Senator, first, thank you for your visit. It means a lot when we get a touch of home when you're 13 hours off, like I know my wife's not watching this right now.
That line. We can't want Taiwan's defense more than they want it themselves. That's not diplomatic boilerplate. That's a warning. That's a 4-star admiral telling a sitting U.S. senator on the record that Taiwan needs to get serious and fast. Because America can sell them weapons. America can run freedom of navigation operations through the Taiwan Strait. America can keep its alliances with Japan and South Korea intact. But America cannot be more committed to Taiwan's survival than Taiwan is. And the chicken metaphor wasn't accidental either. You don't get chicken or eggs if you starve the chicken. Meaning, if Taiwan doesn't fund its own defense now, there may be nothing left to defend later. This is the conversation that should be dominating Washington right now. Instead, it's buried in a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing that most people will never see. Let's go back to South Korea, because that piece of this matters too. Senator Shaheen also asked General Brunson about OPCON, that's Operational Control, the transfer of wartime command from U.S. forces to the South Korean military. South Korea's President Lee wants it done before the end of his administration. And Brunson's answer was careful but clear. The transfer is conditions-based, not politically based, not timeline-based, conditions-based. In other words, South Korea wants the symbolic achievement of running their own war. The U.S. military is saying that's fine, but we move when the conditions are right, not when it's politically convenient for your administration. That's a polite way of saying not yet. And underneath all of it, Taiwan, South Korea, the OPCON debate is the same question, the question that Admiral Paparo came back to at the end, the one about Iran. How does what's happening in the Middle East affect China's thinking? Because this is the strategic reality that almost nobody in mainstream media is connecting clearly enough. China is not making decisions in isolation. They are watching the United States perform in real time. Every missile strike, every ship interdiction, every moment where American forces either show resolve or hesitate, China is running the numbers. They're asking if the U.S. is stretched across the Middle East right now, what does that mean for their appetite to respond in the Pacific? And that is exactly why Admiral Paparo's testimony was so significant. He didn't say, "We hope Iran sees us as strong." He didn't say, "We're monitoring the situation." He said, "There is no substitute for prevailing." He said he could not be stronger in his support for the ongoing operation. He said the United States employs capability and will in response to aggression, and he does not want China to doubt that. That's a deterrence message delivered through a Senate microphone to an audience in Beijing. The question is Beijing listening? And more importantly, do they believe it? Because here's what the transcript tells us if you read between the lines. The U.S. military is fighting in the Middle East right now. They're managing an alliance with South Korea that hasn't fully transferred command yet. They're watching Taiwan debate a defense budget that should have been passed months ago. And they're trying to make China believe that none of that stretching, none of that pressure would slow down an American response in the Pacific. That's a lot to hold at once. And the men sitting in front of the Senate this week, Paparo, Brunson, they're not politicians. They don't perform alarm. When an admiral at this level says deterrence is our highest duty, that's not a talking point. That's a man telling you exactly what keeps him up at night. Here's what you just watched. A Senate hearing that, on the surface, looked like routine testimony, travel updates, budget questions, diplomatic niceties, but underneath it was one of the most direct public statements from the U.S. military in months. Active operations against Iran. Active engagement in the theater. Maritime interdictions. Missile threats to Diego Garcia. All of it confirmed by the Indo-Pacific commander himself in open session with one explicit purpose to make sure China doesn't miscalculate. Taiwan is being told to fund its own defense or risk being starved of the ability to survive. South Korea's wartime command transfer is being slowed by conditions the U.S. military controls, not Seoul's political calendar. and China is watching all of it. Admiral Papero didn't flinch. He didn't hedge. He said the quiet part loud. The United States is already fighting. The deterrence message to China is being sent. And the only question now is whether everyone in Washington, in Taipei, and in Beijing is actually hearing it. If this hearing gave you more clarity on what's actually happening in the Pacific and the Middle East than anything you've seen on cable news this week, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is here to do. Share this video. And drop your thoughts below. Do you think China is being deterred right now, or are they still calculating a window? Let's hear it.